Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's another edition of Let's Talk Broncos. I had to replace Zach and Bree today with someone someone who's been studying Bo Nix like thoroughly. And that is Frankie Abbott from Full Field Read here at Let's Talk Broncos. If you guys have just been checking them out, they've been killing it over there, bringing you all the Bo Nix film analysis, everything you'd want to know about the franchise quarterback or the future franchise quarterback for the Broncos, hopefully franchise quarterback for the Broncos. Frankie, how are you doing today, man? Thanks for joining me.
I'm doing great, Joey. We're back. Maybe we'll have to talk some draft prospects or something like that. Like the Thursday show is a fucking alive. But I'm doing fantastic. Not as well as I would be doing if they were able to continue the win streak. But it was kind of my prediction for the game was that they would lose. I didn't expect it to be as brutal of an ass whooping as it ended up being. But I'm doing pretty good. And I mean, we get some good news. Well, I guess depending upon how you feel about, the hierarchy of the Broncos edge room the past couple of years, maybe some good news. But I believe some all around good news from our point of view for the Denver Broncos today and the Jonathan Cooper extension.
Yeah, no, I think both the moves today were like positives for the Broncos. I do. I'm not mad at either of them. Let's start off just with what you said. Jonathan Cooper, the Broncos gave him a 4-year, $60 million deal. 33 million of that deal will be guaranteed. So I think this is awesome, Frankie. I think this is a really awesome move. I remember messaging you back and forth back in the day, and you were talking to me about it before the show went live, where me and you were on Jonathan Cooper early, man. We were on him early, talking about he's probably the best pound for pound edge in this room. Like 2-3 years ago. And to see this extension come in, it's rewarding. It's the type of player I think you want to give an extension to. It's a guy that just has gotten better every single year since he's been in the league. He's a hard worker. All the players come out and say that. And then just his play on the field, I think he's your best edge setter. I just think he's your best pound for pound player right now in that edge room. So I'm excited about it. But how do you feel, Frankie?
Oh, I'm ecstatic. There was part of me, like, again, I was probably one of the people that was a little more like, I don't know if they should end up paying him, just because I was a believer that if he hit free agency, he was just going to get a massive deal. I really thought like he could demand a lot of money. He is a player that has kind of put up a little bit flashier numbers in the last couple of years with the sacks. He is a guy that has played a lot of snaps. Like, he doesn't miss a lot of time all throughout his career. He's a guy that, as you've mentioned, has gotten better every single year. And just, yeah, man, he's kind of one of those pieces that he kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Harold Landry type over if you look at like what the Titans have. Like, he's just kind of one of those edge rushers that, he might not ever have that ceiling of like, a top 15, like, whatever you want to say type of guy, like a super elite ceiling, but he just offers such a comfortable floor that, like, and again, for the price you're getting him at, it's absolutely insane. I mean, I mentioned it today. He's coming in right now as the 22nd, like, annual value contract. And, a lot of it comes down to guarantees, whatever, but his contract right now, like, it's coming in at an absolute steal. I thought he would really be able to push the market a little bit more, again, as a guy who's looking like he's going to have a bit of a really solid campaign here going into the rest of the season. So it's very exciting that they were able to get him locked up, Surtain and Quinn Miners. And I mean, I think the idea that he was so, I don't want to say eager to stick around, but it really does seem like he wanted to stay here based on the fact that, like, he didn't test free agency. This is a guy that how many defensive coordinators has, Jonathan Cooper had to play with since he got here? Is it 3 at this point? Because he got drafted with Vic, right?
Yep.
He got drafted with Vic, yeah. Drafted under Vic, and then they obviously moved on to Evero, and then they moved on to now they have Vance Joseph, and this is a guy that still seems very bought into the organization. Exciting to get to have him for the next couple of years, and he's really a piece that, like, again, it doesn't stop this team from upgrading with the amount that he costs, but it's also a player that, okay, we now don't have a glaring need at edge going into next year, because it was going to be interesting seeing if they wanted to kind of go a little bit cheaper, which I thought maybe they'd end up doing just so they have a little bit of extra capital to throw at the offense.
Right.
But, hey, man, now you've got Baron Browning and the ability to say, hey, maybe if the right edge is available with our first-round pick, because, the first round's kind of it's a mixed bag this year, it seems like. Hey, man, you could end up getting a possible ace guy with a Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper already waiting in the wings. That could be a pretty nasty combination to build up looking forward towards the offseason.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think D Bronx comes in. He makes a really good point. He said, I think it's good for an organization to reward a guy like that. Lets the locker room know this is let's soccer know this is real. What is this word?
Meritocracy. I just read it.
See.
He's booling on us right now.
No, I totally agree with this, though. This is absolutely true. Do you remember the Elway days?
Yes.
Where they would not pay these dudes at all. And that was a talking point at the time where it was like, hey, yes, Elway has a good track record. He lets guys go. He goes and gets new guys at the right time. But for the speaking to the locker room and how that works, I do think it means something to the rest of these guys where they're seeing guys getting rewarded for their play. I think that means something. I don't think we can just throw that out and say that is pointless. This is a 7th round draft pick that the Broncos are giving a big contract to right now, and he's proven it year after year after year. This is just good for speaking, and it speaks volumes in the locker room where, hey, if you go out there and prove it to us, we'll go out there and give you that bag. We'll go out there and pay you for real. So this is a big deal, I just think, for the locker room in general, which brings me to the next point, Frankie, which is Baron Browning. The Broncos also moved Baron Browning. That was before the contract was announced. It sounds like the contract was this weekend. Meanwhile, the Baron Browning trade just went on today. Traded to the Arizona Cardinals for a 6th round pick. Frankie, what did you make of this one?
Seemed like kind of an eventuality. I mean, again, it seemed like they were going to have to pick between these two guys in Cooper and Browning. And while, yes, Cooper is super flashy, he's had some flashes of like, man, this guy could be truly special. You know, he has some really high-end traits on some categories. But sadly, the best ability is availability, and he just hasn't been able to be available a lot for the Denver Broncos in his time. And it seems like right now, Cooper's ahead of him, Bonita's ahead of him, and it seems like the young guy, Jonah Ellis, is ahead of him as well. So you end up just kind of looking at it. It seems like he didn't really have the opportunity here to really claim his spot after missing those first 4 weeks. I think it is a really good chance for him to get to go to Arizona, where we were talking about before the show, like they just don't really have any guys. Like they have Dennis Gardecki, I believe, but outside of him, like they don't really have any guys on the defensive line. I'm pretty sure he might be hurt as well. So like he has a real opportunity, I think, of, hey, if he ends up flashing a little bit for these guys, he probably can lock up like a 1-2 year extension with them, because they'll need to just have something to kind of build off of. So I think it's a really good opportunity for him. I'm sure it is like no one in the locker room, I'm sure, is excited to get to see him go, but like I don't think it's going to be one of those things that fractures the room apart. I think it's understandable. He's on an expiring deal. Again, he was a backup, and I think probably the guys are probably thinking to themselves, hey, or not them, but I'm sure Baron Browning is excited to say, hey, I'm going to be able to go actually get snaps, as opposed to, I don't know how many snaps he got last week, but I'd imagine it was sub 30,
Right.
So
yes. And Baron is a guy that's flashed a lot. It's just the injuries. And to what you were talking about earlier about like, yeah, that's exactly what Zach's question here. He said, speaking of, are you too worried about any locker room fallout? No, I'm really not. I just think that this could be a little overstated sometimes. And the reasons why people play football and stuff at their age specifically, I don't think it's like youth football anymore, where we're all just in it for the love of the sport. I think this is great. This is an awesome talking point. I think we also watch maybe a little too many football movies. I think these guys are out there to go get paid, and they want to go get that second contract. So this is good for Baron Browning. This is good for the rest of the edge room too. If you're Jonah Ellis right now, you're probably disappointed to see a guy like who is a good guy like Baron Browning leave, but you're also excited for, hey, I am going to get more snaps. What I saw while he was injured, I'm going to get that many snaps going forward, because there's not another guy in front of me, and I'm trying to prove myself in the league right now. I think that's the same with all these guys in the room. It's kind of bittersweet. It's a little of both there. I don't think there's going to be like a fallout for it, though. I just don't see that happening.
No,
go ahead.
That's a great point you mentioned too about the young guys really getting opportunities and having the chance to run with it, because we saw this last year when the team got rid of Randy Gregory and Frank Clark, when they really were just like, hey, Baron and Jonathan Cooper, just run with it. We got to really ride with you guys and see what we're able to get. Or maybe that was a couple years ago at this point, whatever. brain's too jumbled from just the Broncos mess of messiness for however long. But anyways, like, it's really exciting, I think, for them to actually get that chance. And I mean, again, we've seen them kind of do this before. I can't imagine it really being that big of a, factor as far as the rest of the season goes, because like you said, these guys are trying to make money for themselves. And I think they're probably pretty excited seeing like, hey, one of our guys in Jonathan Cooper did just get paid, at the end of the day, like, Baron Browning was not staring down the type of contract that Jonathan Cooper was. That's just objectively what it was. Jonathan Cooper has been a much more pivotal and available piece for this team than Baron Browning has gotten to be up until this point. So, yes, it's exactly like you said. Yeah. So, anyways.
No, I totally agree. LTB Muse comes in. He says, shout out to the Film Junkie for joining the show. Shout out to LTB Muse, always in here, always joining the conversation, always like adding to the conversation too. He knows the ins and outs of LTB. He knows 20.
He's got the dirt. Like, there's stuff in this dude's closet that he has on us, like files fucking saved up. You don't know what's in there.
He's on my tweets from 2015. Like, it's crazy sometimes.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous games.
He scares me. But shout out to LTB Muse. Love you, man. I wish I knew who he was. That's a conversation I'm always trying to figure out, is who he is. I thought it was Liam Hammer of Let's Talk Broncos for a little bit, but it's not, apparently.
It adds to the fucking magic of it, though. I think it really does.
It definitely does. The last piece on Baron Browning, and it's exactly what you were saying about how I think he still has opportunity. I even think if you're in the locker room, Frankie, and you're thinking about it, it's like, hey, this guy has been hurt literally from the moment he stepped part of the Broncos. And he still has opportunity. It's not like the NFL has given up on this guy. They are still giving him opportunity to the point where the Broncos could go trade him for a pick, which honestly kind of shocked me. And it adds to just the benefit of the Broncos here. I just thought he'd be a street free agent this next year, and someone would go sign him. I didn't think that he would be signed. He flashed. He's shown it in pieces. He hasn't even shown really the ability, in my opinion, to be the greatest down-to-down football player to this point. This is a potential play for the Cardinals for me. It's just crazy to me that the Broncos did get a pick out of it. So shout out to George.
I'm excited too, because Arizona does some fun stuff on defense, so they can kind of use him in some weird ways, which is like, yeah. But yeah, no, I do think it's a really good, move by George Paton to kind of recuperate some assets. Get it? Huh? But again, like, they're able to kind of gain a little bit, which is, again, they need as many of these young contracts as possible. Take as many swings in the strike zone as you can, and I mean, again, I think I was a pretty anti-George Paton guy. It's pretty hard for me to argue at this point that, like, the dude's been hitting on a lot of these day 3 picks at this point. I'm looking at guys like Devon Villay. I'm like, shit, maybe we should give George a couple more 6th round picks at this point, because he seems to be making him work a little bit. 7th round picks.
Absolutely. I mean, with the Villay one, I saw his age and I was like, holy shit, what are we doing?
I've talked about it. Big Daddy Drix is someone I follow on Twitter. He's the only, like, me and you are obviously, we're very in the film world of the Twitterverse. Yeah. And like, I didn't see a single person mention that guy a single time once. I never saw a clip posted of him. The amount of players, like, I have like a list going, because whenever I see a clip of a college football player, I'm like, okay, noted down. You got to kind of keep that going throughout the year. Never saw once this guy talked about. I know. And then all of a sudden, he looks the part of an NFL receiver this year, and you can't help but be like, damn, good pick.
Yeah, and when you cover it as close as we do, Frankie, it's kind of crazy when the Broncos take a guy that you don't know of. It's very Montrell Washington-esque. It's like that's the feeling I got.
Yeah.
So, because it was like, to anyone that doesn't know the Montrell Washington story, he was shocked to be drafted by the Broncos. He was in there like, oh my God, I'm getting drafted. Like, there was a story about that. So I'm like, no, not this again. I want a guy that knows he's good enough to be drafted. But shout out to Montrell. He was a fun punt and kick returner for the preseason. Let's get to the game, though, Frankie. I want to talk about this last game where the Broncos absolutely got whooped. I think it's fair to say there's a lot of disappointment in Broncos country. There are a lot of people that expected us to go in there, maybe not necessarily win the game, but play it close. On the offensive side of the football, how much of the blame do you put on Bo Nix specifically for like just their output in that game? It wasn't that great.
Well, this is a random thought. Think about how fun it'd be to be a Ravens podcast after that week. You'd just be like, oh my God, our quarterback is just like a top 5, whatever. Anyways, yeah, no, that was an absolute ass whooping from top to bottom. It did not feel good. I went back and watched that. So I'll be completely honest. I mean, I think most people probably came into that second half, watched them score that second touchdown, went up 31-10. And then I threw some things on the side screen. I was maybe doing some chores. I was doing some laundry. I was folding stuff. I wasn't necessarily as locked into the game as soon as I realized, so Derrick Henry's just going to end this game here, huh? So I didn't really recognize how, like, obviously, I saw it get out of hand, but like, man, the offense really kind of unfolded there. And I went from, I put out a tweet, I'm a little bit regretting where I was like, man, like, I'm feeling pretty decent about what Bo Nix, like, obviously, again, you're not saying he played well, but it looked like he played within the offense, especially in the first half. I thought they were able to generate big plays, that it seems like he was operating well. Man, after we watched it, I'm kind of like, oof, that wasn't good. And yeah, it's a little bit like, again, you end up, the score was 17-10. Then all of a sudden the Ravens score a whatever touchdown that was, Jesus Christ. So here's I watched that touchdown walking back as he walked into the end zone confused, because I was like, all right, minute left, like probably not much going to happen. Denver's going to be fine. I'm going to go grab, whatever from wherever. Come back in. I'm like, Jesus, how did they score a touchdown? And yeah, the Broncos' spine, like the linebacker play and safety play this weekend, very bad. Very not up to the standard I think we've kind of seen throughout the season. I think it's just obviously, we saw PJ Locke go down. Devon Key did not have a great day. It was very Delaren Turner-Yell-esque from last year in the Miami Dolphins game, where it was just like, man, light's just a little bit too bright for the guy. But again, like, he's getting thrown into a spot you're not expecting him to kind of be in. So I don't want to beat up on him too hard. But yeah, top to bottom, really not fun performance. And this team is not built to play from down 3 scores.
It absolutely is not.
I didn't answer your question. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So Bo Nix, how much blame do I put on him? I don't know, a fair bit. Like the offense's struggles, like, I don't know, the run game was not as effective as it should have been. Mm-hmm. Just kind of, again, like top to bottom, they just kind of got shafted. So I'd probably say like the usual amount.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, I think when your offensive output just isn't great, your automatic thought is to look at the quarterback, and it's for good reason. The quarterback is the most important position on the football field, offensively or defensively, and it's by a very substantial margin. It's hard to call plays when your quarterback isn't looking good. I know Frankie's going to go after this and full field read. I did think the first half was a lot more encouraging than the second half. That's one thing I do have to say. The first half, it felt to me like, yes, there were misses, and they, for whatever reason with Bo Nix, it feels like a majority of his misses are loud misses. It's, oh, shoot, you just missed that one, and it would have been a touchdown instead of him just missing the regular play that would have been, for whatever gain. Right. No, he just missed a 20 or 30-yard touchdown on that play. It does feel like it's just unfortunate circumstances sometimes in that scenario. There are plays where you're going to go on your Twitter timeline and people are going to be using it as the reason why Bo Nix sucks. So that it's unfortunate with that, but I did end up in that first half. I even tweeted it like you, where I was, hey, I'm not even that mad right now because all I care about is Bo Nix. Really, that's the main thing of this Broncos franchise right now, because that's what's going to carry us through the future. And I'm not mad about the loss, or I'm not mad about the deficit right now, because Bo Nix looks pretty comfortable. Second half rolled around, not as good. I couldn't even watch the fourth quarter, Frankie. It was tough. It was really, really tough. The defense fell apart. We'll get into the defense later. But so did the offense. Everything kind of fell apart. The run game obviously didn't help him. I don't want to be the guy that just comes on here and starts making excuses for Bo Nix. Run game's terrible. Really, though, like, I think your running game, your running back is really not great. Standard starting running back for the NFL at this point. And I think his weapons suck. And I also think he just didn't play good.
Brutal. I wanted to touch on this. So I don't know if Javonte really was RB1 this week. I think we saw Jaleel get like the first couple, like, again, like you said, I want to see some Audric. I'll be honest, like, fumbles suck. We can't have Audric estimate fumbling. I don't care. I want to see that dude run the fucking rock because it seems like he's actually able to, like, you know, have some decent vision and hit lanes correctly and with a little bit of ferocity. So I'm trying to
Jaleel, you're saying?
No, Audric Estime.
Audric, yes.
Like, fumbles suck. He needs to clean those up. But, like, man, like, we just need a little bit of juice in the running game right now. But yeah, man, it was a rough outing, and it's tough because, again, this Ravens defense in areas was very beatable. Kyle Hamilton is a hell of a player. I will say that. Crazy. Kyle Hamilton did some shit that's just like, seeing him on the field is just so, like, he looks like a Madden created player, just like the way, like, yeah, whatever. But yeah, their team just kind of ended up beating the shit out of Denver. The thing just got so out of hand quickly once the kind of score got away from them. And yeah, like you said, they just don't have kind of the weaponry to be able to deal with a lot of the stuff. And I mean, you know, what were your thoughts on, you know, what were your thoughts on the fourth down decisions?
I thought that, like, I didn't mind the fourth down decisions, Frankie. I think you were bringing up some really good points during the game when you were live tweeting the game about that pitch they threw. I know a lot of people at home, my dad included, because I was watching the game with my dad, and he was screaming at the dude, "They're getting too cute with it," when they pitched that ball out to Javonte. I didn't mind it at all. When you have a loaded box like that, yes, get it to the outside, get it going. When you have everything condensed in the middle of your defense, I'm not mad at it. To me, that was just more of a, hey, your guys need to play better type play. It's a block away from being a big play. It's a good play call in that situation. I'm calling this play thinking my players are going to execute the play. I'm never calling the play thinking that my players are going to screw this up. So I'm not mad at the play call on that. The other one I'm thinking of is the fade route to Franklin, the slot fade. How could I be mad at that? Both these plays are drawn up and they should be success. It was the execution that made it not go their way. So how am I mad at the coach in that situation?
The other thing I'd say too is, I mean, and Sean Payton touched on this, the math is so much different right now when you're facing this Ravens team. Like as crazy as it is, like I saw a stat today, like Lamar is like a top 5 EPA per drop back quarterback in the past like 20 years. Like he's up there with, what is it, 2013 Manning, the year he had the 55 touchdown year. So like, guys, think about it. If you were watching 55 touchdown Peyton Manning come to town, are you settling for fucking field goals? Because I'm fucking not. Jesus. Like we just watched them. This team has scored like 30 plus, 40 plus. They're averaging 30.3 points a game, dude. 3 points is not doing shit here. And at the end of the day, like, this team is playing with house money right now, guys. Like, this team is not like, they were projected to win 5.5 games. It would be fucking lovely for them to make the playoffs. I really hope they can do it. I think they have a great opportunity to do it this year. But if they just miss it, this year is a great success.
Yeah.
You know, the entire year is about evaluating Bo Nix. But man, if we see that Sean Payton is putting together a team that can just consistently win 7 to 8 games, and he's doing it with basically a hand tied behind his back because the team has $60 million just, you know, in the nether realm. Like,
yeah.
Right.
And, you know, like first round picks, really, like you're still trying to figure out your quarterback. So you draft your quarterback. Yeah. But you had to trade a first round pick to even acquire Sean Payton. You're acquiring a team that didn't have first round picks because of Russell Wilson before then. It's a talent deficient team.
Right.
Everything's, yeah, I agree.
You play to win the fucking game. So, like, you know, you're already, like, again, like I said, playing with house money, bet big. Let's go. Let's try to make this stuff happen. We got to really, like, it was going to need to be a shootout. They knew that from snap one. And they, as you said, like, the plays they drew up ended up being, like, good calls for the situation. And, like, I want to talk about the toss for a second because, again, the hardest thing, guys, they just did a QB sneak before that play. I know everybody is like, oh, just like they just run it straight. Dude, like, I don't know what to tell you. They had 4 bodies sitting in the A and B gap, right? Yeah. They have big bodies, dude. Baltimore is a team that is built in both of their trenches. Like, dude, this team plays Daniel Falele at guard. Like, They just have massive juggernaut human beings, and they've always had a very good defensive line coach. And again, this isn't me trying to beat up on Alex Forsyth in particular, but Denver also has a rookie center that in this game struggled. Justin Madubuike beat the shit out of him most of the time. I think he changed his name, actually. Madubuike might have changed his name. But that might be a random thing. I might be completely wrong about that, but I thought he did.
That'd be funny.
We're just like, dude, like, yeah. And they checked into it. Like, dude, they saw how loaded the box was. And, like, dude, the play call was beautiful. I loved it. They had Pert lined up as left tackle. They had Bulls coming as the eligible, right? They had Mims lined up as, like, the F. And then they had little Jordan Humphrey, right? Or maybe it was Sutton. They bring, and again, as we talked about before the game, Ravens on 3rd and 4th down were just playing straight man all game. And Sean was just like, all right, well, I can beat that all day long. What am I trying to say? So then you get Mims motioning across the formation. So now you've got the DB running with Mims across. And now we're running a pin pull where we're going to have Sutton crack down on the end, which he does a great job. He flattens the shit out of the guy. He blocks him so hard that his block actually trips McGlinchey. And then McGlinchey can't get to the second level and open up the lane for Javonte, and Javonte doesn't reach for it. But, like, the play design, I fucking loved it. And I think in reality, like, again, people might be pissed about this, but on both 4th down plays, you might be pissed that they're going for shots. The shots were there, guys. Yeah. If Mike McGlinchey makes that block, I think Javonte is running for 65 yards and a touchdown. If Troy Franklin and Bo Nix are able to, build up that chemistry to connect on that slot fade, oh man, like
what did you see on the replay of that slot fade?
Dude, I don't know. I think I'm coping too hard. It's so weird. It just, like, again, the chemistry just isn't there, I think. I think that it was just one of those plays where Bo obviously overshot it a little bit. I do think that there is, like, a Troy Franklin, like, little bit of just a hitch of a let go. Not but just a slowdown when he looks back for the ball because he's probably not expecting, like, the ball to come to him on the slot fade or whatever it is. Like, again, and he's able to run down the ball. Like, and it's the most, like, minimal thing where who even knows if he doesn't do that, if the ball is going to be in range because it was a little bit out of reach. But fuck, man, it's just one of those things where it's those two. I don't even want to put it on either one of them in particular because we've seen it be such an issue between the two of them that, like, it's just something I think they need to figure out as a unit, as Troy Franklin and Bo Nix. They need to, because we've seen Troy drop them. We've seen miscommunications. We've seen Bo Nix slightly missing. We've seen, routes just not being ran perfectly right. Like, there just needs to be some level. And again, it's so funny because everyone was all like, oh, well, this is why you draft. You get Bo Nix, you Albert Okwuegbunam on his ass.
It's different in the NFL, man.
You'll be good to go. And it's like, nah, dude. Like, and again, as much as it sucks, like, Troy Franklin was like he's a young receiver. First of all, he's a guy that came out very young and was a guy that was raw coming out. So I feel bad for how much flack Troy Franklin gets because, dude,
I agree. We were talking about it on our draft episode we did. When after the Broncos drafted Troy Franklin, you came on here as just like an instant reaction with me, you, and Zach. Me and you were big. Like, we watched Troy Franklin right before the day before because he was getting so much hype of like, hey, you just drafted Bo Nix. The Broncos can get Troy Franklin. And we were like, okay, I do kind of understand why he's dropping to this point. It isn't anything to do with potential. I think Troy Franklin, even in his games played as a starter, you're seeing the potential. It's just he probably shouldn't be on the field yet. Like, I think in your normal wide receiver room where you have competent players all around, Troy Franklin's probably sitting on your bench and you're developing him. I think in the Broncos situation right now, they're playing him. Does that make him a good wide receiver at the moment? No. Like, these drops and stuff like that, this is all stuff that you saw on film. This is absolutely all stuff you saw on film coming out of Oregon, working downfield and just having a hard time tracking and securing the ball on these deep routes, getting open, running right back
over the middle of the field. Like, yeah, like there's, and it's also just kind of one of those, yeah, I mean, you nailed it on the head. And one of the biggest things is just like, guys, like, you see, like, the biggest evidence is like, look at the difference between 26-year-old Devon Villay, who got to, like, he comes in much more polished. Like, there's a reason everybody's so much more excited about him, and like rightfully so. But like, it is probably accurate. They're like, yeah, he is a little bit closer to his ceiling than obviously a guy like Troy Franklin, because he's 26. He has been working and refining his game for just so much longer, and is just like a fully developed like human, like literally, like he's 25. He's a 25-year-old. Like that's when you kind of like stop fucking, like. Whereas Troy Franklin is still needing to kind of like get through his shit and kind of reach the point where like he can kind of be a true NFL receiver, and just it's just been a little bit. But that play is obviously, it's not on Troy Franklin. It's on Bo and Troy Franklin to probably figure out how to make these connections happen, because they have just been brutal all season long. And it's so sad because, again, like, think about how, like, and this is going to sound like almost like, I don't know. You got to feel almost bad for Troy Franklin at a certain point. Think about the rookie season he could be having. His ass could be walking home like, man, he could be ending the season with like 5 40-yard bomb touchdowns. And they not feel bad for him, but like, it's one of those things like, dude, that guy's got to be kicking the shit out of himself because the opportunities are in his fucking hands.
Right. No, you're absolutely right there. It's not even like, it's not even discouragement for Troy Franklin as a Bronco. It's just realizing that, hey, the Broncos wide receiver room is in such a situation that you're forced to play a guy with a ton of potential, but isn't ready to play yet. So Troy Franklin could still end up being a really good football player. All we're saying is like, hey, he's probably not ready right now. That's all. That's all.
Do you think he makes the roster next year?
I think
he was way too early.
I think he makes the roster this year. To anyone that was at training camp, you were kind of even wondering if he was going to make the roster this year.
You think after they spend all their money, have their draft, you think Troy Franklin isn't a practice squad guy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm having a hard time even thinking of like which wide receivers on the Broncos have the potential Troy Franklin have. Or who am I developing? I think Marvin Mims may be more of a camp casualty than Troy Franklin is.
Yeah. God,
it's
gonna be a fun offseason. Well,
it's gonna be
there's gonna be a lot of turnover in the weapon, which I mean there needs to be.
Yep. The whole offense, Frankie, is going to be renewed. I think the offensive line is going to be very similar. Running back, I think it's probably going to be different. I think your wide receivers from almost top to bottom is going to be way different. I think it's a complete new weapons for Bo Nix going into this next year, which is fun. Let's move on to the defense, though, Frankie. Here's the main thing, right? The Broncos defense came into this game, everyone thinking they are one of the best defenses in the NFL. The Ravens just gave them issues the entire game. So here's my question. Are we discouraged by this? Is this a thing where the Broncos have just, hey, they've played really good opponents to make prop their defense up in the first part of the season, and the Ravens was the reality check? Or was it just the Ravens are that good and they beat the Broncos this game? Which one is it?
I think it's probably a little somewhere in the middle. Like, as I love this defense. This defense is fun as hell. There were a lot of people being like, this is the new no-fly zone. I don't think they're quite on that level. They're a very good defense. I don't think they're quite on that level. But again, like you said, I mean, dude, Lamar Jackson is just playing on another fucking level right now, man. Like, it's just kind of one of those where you're just kind of like, damn. Like, there were so many, what is it? Like, in basketball, when you watch, like, a tough shot, that's tough. There were so many that's tough moments in the game where it's like, oh, man, Derrick Henry's running right at Brandon Jones. That's tough. Like, that's tough for Brandon Jones to try to wrap him up. Oh, and Derrick Henry jumped over him, and that's touchdown. All right, Lamar Jackson's dropping back in the pocket. We've got good coverage for the first 4 seconds. And now Zay Flowers, who is one of the shiftier receivers in the league, what are you going to fucking do? It's been now 6 seconds, and Zay Flowers isn't covered anymore. And guess what? Lamar Jackson is just throwing beautiful, perfect, layered passes. It was just a fucking nightmare. Like, again, like, yes, the defense needed to play better. The pressure wasn't great, but, like, it's one of those things, like, I saw some people, like, and again, I'm probably the ultimate couch coach, who's sitting there and being like, oh, why, whatever. That's basically my entire brand at this point. But the amount of people that are just like, why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing this? Like, guys, there aren't good answers. You can't really run man against the Ravens because A, they have good man beaters at receiver, and B, running man against a runner like Lamar is fucking dangerous. You also can't really blitz against a guy like Lamar Jackson because, oh crap, Well, now we're just giving up deep opportunities down the field. And if we all rush upfield and he's able to break in up the middle, well, now we're just giving up a massive gainer. And this is something me and Robbie talked about before the season, or as the season kind of got going. Like, as much as it sucks with the way the defense is playing, guys, like we saw it all year and they weren't even really doing it that much. This team blitzes a shit ton. This team plays a boom or bust brand of football. Guess what? They busted last week because they faced what looks like one of the best quarterback seasons of the last like 20 years. Like that's straight up what Lamar Jackson's on pace to do. So like,
it's so hard to defend him, Frankie.
And then
that's so hard. Go ahead.
And here's the thing. They started the game really trying to stop the run because you have to. You literally have to. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, Derrick Henry is just fucking running over people as soon as it got to the second half because they had to kind of start trying to drop to the pass. But, like, they just could not. Like, there just isn't a good answer for that offense right now. And, again, like, I'm going to keep preaching to people. It's not just a Denver problem, even though I know, again, Denver has this fantastic defensive unit and this really good play caller right now in Vance Joseph. But, like, what are you going to do when you've got genuinely, again, one of the best quarterback seasons of the last however many fucking years, and then Derrick Henry, who's playing like Derrick Henry right now in an offense that's built to just run you over? Like, it's tough.
Yeah, and Deep Bronx comes in. He has two comments here. He says the most disappointing part of the defense was that they went away from who they are, played a ton of zone, and got punished for it. You kind of addressed that in there. Speaking about the zone defense they were running and just saying, hey, if you play, man, and this was my what to watch for. If anyone watched what the Wednesday show this last week, this was my what to watch for. How do the Broncos play defense? Do they change their identity to play this defense? I was curious to see what they were going to do when matched up against Lamar Jackson. I do think he brings up an interesting point where it's like, hey, the zone obviously isn't working either. But this is the conundrum with Lamar Jackson. This is the conundrum with Lamar Jackson. You go away from what you're really great at, which has been man coverage, man blitzes specifically this year, because Lamar can beat you with his legs. I'm not even just saying like he can beat you with his legs. I'm saying that he is one of the greatest of all time, if not the best of all time, at beating you with his legs at the quarterback position for the NFL. He's amazing at it. Man blitzes. He just breaks one single guy. He rolls out the right direction. He identifies the blitz. He's causing issues. Meanwhile, if you run the zone coverage and he's able to just identify whatever, because they ran a lot of those, hey, we're lining everybody up, we're faking the blitz, and we're dropping back into his zone. And he identified it in the snap of a finger and made a great play. It's the conundrum of this offense. It's tough.
And they were also like, again, Greg Roman was designing some really nice stuff. Like I saw a lot of people being like, why isn't PS2 on Zay Flowers? It's like, I don't know if anyone was watching Zay Flowers pre-snap. Zay Flowers is all over the fucking field, dude. And like, you can have PS2 try to run through all this shit, sure. But like, then again, team knows exactly what you're doing, first of all. And B, like, that's tough. That is hard to ask a player to do every single play. They are literally coming out in stacks, and then they're motioning Zay Flowers at the snap and having him run vertical. Okay, we're going to do this however many times a game, and we're just going to keep hoping we kind of have this bunch figured out with Jake McMillan and PS2. And again, as much as it sucks, guys, a lot of the problem wasn't that like the coverage was horrible. A lot of the problem was Lamar Jackson is in the pocket for 6 seconds.
Yeah.
Guess what's really hard,
Frankie, was them trying to contain him from rolling out and stuff, in your opinion?
I'm sorry, what did you say? I didn't hear the first part.
How much of that, the lack of pressure you were seeing from the front four specifically, was them trying to contain Lamar Jackson from rolling out and making plays versus them just having a hard time pass rushing and getting after the quarterback?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what it was. I mean, again, they weren't really sending a lot of stuff at the interior. Zach Allen mentioned how much he was getting double teamed, which I think was kind of a little bit by design. Like they were really trying to kind of attack them from the edges to kind of force Lamar to kind of play the interior. But yeah, like, no, it's just one of those things where, and again, like we talk about like what's really hard to do for like 6+ seconds on these plays. Like, guys, play man coverage. Like it's going to be really difficult if you're having, you know, Riley Moss and Patrick Surtain try to just run with these receivers step for step for, you know, however long Lamar Jackson is buying time for. Like it's just tough. There weren't really a lot of good answers. And at the end of the game, like once it got to a certain point and the game script was at a like, they were really just trying to do everything to stop Derrick Henry, and eventually the train just got rolling. Like, this is a guy that's already got 1,000 yards this season, and you kind of saw why against Denver, who's been a pretty good run defense this year. And also, like, the Tyler Linderbaum had a really good game as well. Their center, like, he might be one of the best centers in the league right now. He was eating. And I mean, we talk about like Malcolm Roach and DJ Jones have been guys that I love watching. Like, they've been really stout run defenders this season. He was tossing those dudes around.
Mm-hmm. I have to give a big shout out to Frankie, to their offensive coordinator, Todd Monken. Man, has he done a good job. And I think like I've been running Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson in Madden since for whenever, right? For like 4 years now. I think in real life, it's a little more of a difficult pairing than people would realize, just because of the Lamar Jackson offense versus your typical Derrick Henry offense. They're two differently built teams. Like, I don't think Derrick Henry is the guy you really want in shotgun all that often. He is a behind the quarterback at a full head of steam runner. And you saw it at the beginning of the year. The marriage didn't necessarily work, but for Todd Monken to make it work, and to make it where I now have to worry about Derrick Henry kicking my ass, and I also have to worry about Lamar Jackson. We talked about the conundrum he brings, whereas what coverage do I run? If he's beating me with his arm like he did this last week, and he's identifying everything early pre-snap, he's getting everything done, it's just like, it really does make it so hard to stop this offense.
Can we talk about that wheel route throw he hit? The Lamar, like,
to Justice Hill?
That was mean. Like again, man, like, there were so many plays like that where it's just like, ugh, like, what are you going to do, man? Like, that's fucked. Like, he's reading shit out. He's working the pockets beautifully. Like, it's just, yeah. Like, I mean, that guy's just playing at an insanely high level. And Lamar Jackson's really my favorite quarterback. Like, I always make the joke, like, Lamar Jackson is the quarterback I'm excited to tell, like, you know, my kids someday that I watch, because like, that dude is just like a different fucking beast of a quarterback. And he has been ever since and it's the fact too, that there's been so many different iterations of him. Like, early Lamar, that was just untouchably fast and elusive. Then we kind of got him developing more as a pocket passer. We kind of got him getting a little bit bulkier. And now, like this year, it feels like he's straight up like what is it, like the 31-year-old Jordan that just like, now he knows all the bags or knows all the fucking tricks in the bag and shit. And like, he's also just still that athletic teamer. Maybe I'm talking like 28.
He's
like,
a Madden created guy. He's
goofy
he's what
shit.
You would create.
Awesome.
Yeah. When you're doing the road to glory shit on NCAA, you're building your quarterback very like a lot like Lamar Jackson. You really are. He can beat you in every single way. Which brings me to the point I before we end here, Frankie, I wanted to talk, or I just wanted to bring up. Do you remember after Deshaun Watson got his contract and everybody pretending like teams just didn't want to pay Lamar? I hate you. Everyone that said that. You
I don't get it, man. Again, you know, I guess the playoff narratives always make me so mad, because again, like, when it's a team sport and when it isn't a team sport is always thrown around just so difficult. But I know Lamar hasn't really performed well in the playoffs. But like, man, that dude is just so undeniably great. He's gonna win a third MVP this year at this rate. Yeah. It's kind of like oh.
Yeah, he's tough.
So, unless Jared Goff swipes it from him.
Oh God, if Jared Goff gets an MVP, I might end it all.
Jared Goff is what we hope Bo Nix can be, Joey. Don't say that. We are literally hoping that Bo Nix can go on the Jared Goff. And Jared Goff was so much better to start than Bo Nix. But that is what we hope. We hope that he can grow in an offense just like Jared has grown in Ben Johnson's offense. That's the comparison. I'm not comparing them as players. But we are literally hoping that we see a similar arc from Bo Nix.
Well, we need to find ourselves a Amon-Ra. We need to find ourselves a Gibbs, a Montgomery, maybe a Penei Sewell in a couple of years.
Throw your shot right now, and this is like such a random thing. Guess the Broncos' first-round pick right now.
Guess the Broncos' first-round pick right now.
Out there.
You know, I don't know. People are gonna hate this. Some people are gonna love it. Mine would probably be a running back right now. I think they're gonna draft a running back. That would be my guess.
Maybe like Jonty, like
Genty or Caleb Johnson, if they're that good enough to where they're drafting later. This draft, just from what I've studied so far, very low at premium positions. I think Travis Hunter is probably your best pound for pound player. He's going early. T-Mac's not that, like, he's good. He's not like these other guys that have gone super early in the draft. I'm just looking at it from the way George Paton and Sean Payton have valued running back over the year. I can see it because it's so strong at running back this year. So maybe that's just my guess.
I'm going to go with Deone Walker just because that dude's a mutant. And I want them to have a mutant on the defensive line next to Zach Allen because I think that'd be really fun.
That would be fun. He's huge, by the way. He's like 6'7", 350. He's crazy. They're saying he's going to come in a lot taller and heavier than what he's listed right now, which makes him massive. From Kentucky, he's been hyped up for years now. People have loved him. So yeah, Frankie, we're gonna have to get some draft content in when it's time this offseason. If you guys like that type of stuff, Frankie and I have been doing this for like 2 years now. I'm sure we'll bring it back and we'll have some other stuff coming on during draft time. I'm trying to get as many Let's Talk Broncos crew members. If you guys would like this, hit everybody up and make sure it happens. Make sure the demand is there. I want all of the Let's Talk Broncos people down in Mobile for Senior Bowl this next year. Credentialed up, doing live shows at Senior Bowl, talking about the draft the whole time. If this is something you want, make sure you're hitting me up. Make sure you're hitting the Let's Talk Broncos crew up. Show us there's a demand. I'm going either way. I just want everyone else there with me. But Frankie, thank you for joining me today. It's a throwback of the Thursday show to all the OG
on a Monday
fans.
Yeah. No, it's been fucking great, dude. And I mean, like, I wish we got to talk after a win, but I mean, I'm hyped for Jonathan Cooper, dude. It's like really cool that they were able to get all of these contracts locked up with Surtain, with Miners, and with Jonathan Cooper all before the season's like even reached its, like, 2/3 of the way through point. Right. Zach Allen next, baby. I really want that Zach Allen extension before he gets too expensive. Come on, George.
That's the next one. Zach Allen's up next.
Do you want Bulls back? One more question.
Bulls?
Yeah.
I think you're kind of you not drafting one this last year kind of has you between a rock and a hard place where I think you have to re-sign him back whether you would want to or not. Yeah. So I think yes.
I kind of agree. I think you're probably, like you said, rock in a hard place. What are you going to do? Just throw, you'd rather not corner yourself into a position. And they don't do that usually. Like, as we've seen, they usually enter the draft without any like glaring holes, like they really try to have at least like a piece there. Like, like as crazy as it sounds, they added Zach Wilson before they drafted Bo Nix. You think about the year they drafted Pat Surtain, they added like 3 corners that offseason before they drafted him. Like they've done this with George every single year with when they try to draft a guy early. Like they don't like to enter the draft with a glaring hole. So I can't imagine if they did lose Garrett Bowles that there would just be no one at left tackle. I'd imagine they'd make some kind of free agent addition. But like you don't want to just have, insert 30-plus-year-old, mid-level tackle and rookie when you could just probably keep Garrett Bowles for around the same price. Yeah, you don't want to upgrade wide receiver just to downgrade at left tackle. Like I just don't think this is doing anything for Bo Nix. I think you're trying to build. If you really want the idea of what he's doing, you should probably re-sign Garrett Bowles at this point. I just don't even know what the option is. Even if you don't love him for whatever reason it may be, if you'd like to replace him, you have a quarterback back there that is going to be in kind of a prove it type situation next year. So you're going to need your left tackle. Maybe even a franchise tag. It sucks for a year. Make it happen. Something like that I could see. But thank you for everyone that's in the chat today. Zach, Bree, and I will be back on Wednesday. And that's all we have for today. Go Broncos, guys. Go Broncos. Have a great night, guys.